Hey, Unicorn Nation, what's up? Max Finn here with another episode of the Unicorn Perspective. Today, I got to sit down with a good friend of mine, somebody I haven't spoke with in 2 years, which is crazy. We were talking about this before we went live on the recording, and I was like, man, we haven't chatted in 2 years. The last time we saw each other was Shopify used to do these, back when we could actually meet in person, they would do these private masterminds for their top partners. And the last one they did was 2 years ago, I think, in Atlanta at the Porsche Innovation Center, where they have like a racetrack where they test all the cars and meeting space, which is really cool. But anyway, Evan and Steve Tan, are just good friends of mine. They're rock stars in the e-com world. So I sat down with Steve all the way in Singapore, which is just amazing. Just to think about this for a second, like how lucky we are. And I know there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world right now. There's a lot of pain, a lot of sorrow, a lot of death and disease, and just economic unrest and civil unrest, and just so much stuff that's tough. But at the same time, we are so blessed and lucky to live in a time that we're living in now, right? Just the ability that like on your device, on your phone right now, you can access every piece of information, every book, movie, song, article ever created in the history of humankind. And that we can communicate across the world, that, Steve and I can be on total opposite ends of the world, and we can stream a 4K high quality video chat and talk and see each other face to face. Just really hit me yesterday when we were talking. And so anyway, back to actually what the point of this episode is. Steve and Evan are known for ecom. They have a massive group with over 100,000 entrepreneurs, marketers, ecom professionals in it. And they've sold over $100 million of the product through their dropshipping stores. But they do so much more than that, right? They have a company with over 400 employees in 6 countries. And so, I wanted to initially start this conversation talking about ecom and the trends in ecom. And we definitely talk about some of that stuff, software. But the conversation also focused a lot on, what drives him as an entrepreneur? What are his goals? What's the mindset like for somebody that runs such a large company? And more importantly, what are some of the skills you need? What are some things you should be doing as a marketer, as somebody in the e-com world right now, to think bigger and prepare for the future, right? Because Facebook ads, Google ads, dropshipping, these are all skills. They're all very focused, specific skills. Building a business, building a 10, 50, $100 million business requires a lot more than just knowing those things. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't get talked about as much because it's not sexy. And so this interview, we talked a lot about that. We talked about mindset. We talked about optimizations. We talked about structure. We talked about, how to grow a business, how to set goals, how to exit, just so much stuff covered in a relatively short period of time, just an hour conversation. But just a great interview. Steve and Evan are just amazing human beings. They're incredibly giving with their information, with their knowledge, with their time, considering how precious their time is. So stay tuned. You're really going to enjoy this one. All right, Steve, what's up, brother? So I got to get I'm recording this at night because obviously Steve and I are on very opposite ends. I think we're almost equal opposite ends of the planet right now talking, which is like, by the way, and I just told you this before we went on live. I said like, hey, and we're not live, by the way, just before we started recording, but I said like, there's no script, there's no agenda. I have no idea what I'm even talking about. So sometimes I just press record and stuff happens. So this is like a tangent right out of the gate. I was writing a post today about just like gratitude and acceptance of what you have. Like we keep leveling up our goals and we forget like all the stuff we've accomplished. And one of the things I was thinking about was like the ability, like we're all going through tough times right now. That's just as humanity, right? Everyone around the world. But even with all of that, like we still live in like the greatest time to be alive. Just like the fact that you and I can, in almost like 4K, like we're talking together, recording, total opposite ends of the world, different time zones, different everything, but we're able to video chat and have a conversation and stay in touch and catch up. And we can communicate and we can share business ideas and we can start a business together. Like there's so many things that can be done which could never be done in history. And it is just like, it kind of just hit me right now as we were talking, like the fact that we can even do this, like how lucky we are, and just to be born like when we were born and have all the things we have today, despite all the shit going on, because there's a lot of bad shit going on, but it's like there's so much good stuff to look at. So I'll shut up there. Steve, it's good to chat with you, brother. It's been a long time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Max. Like it's been quite a while since the last Shopify Mastermind, right?
I know it's been a while. I was trying to think the last time we hung out and chatted. And I honestly, I don't. Was it Atlanta? Was that the last time?
Yeah, I think it was like 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years. I think they were supposed to have one, and they kind of like, eventually I think they got canceled. So we changed our plans, but I think it was at the Porsche Center in
Yeah, that
Atlanta.
innovation
Yeah.
center. Which, by the way,
Yeah.
that was one of the coolest. Like Shopify every year would do this like private little mastermind where they'd invite some of their top partners, and they did it like in Atlanta at the Porsche Innovation Center, and it was so cool because we got to like have this little mastermind. There was like a racetrack behind us. They were testing the Taycan, all new cars and stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
That was a
yeah.
really cool little event.
Yeah, it's been great, and like it's a good time for all of us to catch up as well. Like, everyone flying over, like just a few short days to catch up and like network. It's been great. Yeah, I miss that.
It is weird. It's you take for granted like the just the basics of human contact, just like being able to go with friends. You were talking before, like going out friends to go to get a drink and stuff. Like so many basic things that we just don't do anymore. And this is the kind of the new normal is like catching up on Zoom and Skype and FaceTime and stuff. That's become
Yeah.
the
It's been awkward like when things just unlock in Singapore like a couple of months ago, like you forgot like how to like high five, hug somebody. It's just been like, oh, hello, because we've been all like on Zoom so much, we kind of like lost touch a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's those things that we take for granted that's like that we're missing out, to be honest. And I think it's good, that this happened. Kind of like it reminds us that we need to be grateful and thankful for what we have and what we think what we take things for granted all the time. Yeah.
yeah. Well, let me ask you this question out of the gate. And like we'll talk, we have so much to talk about obviously ecom and the trends and everything, but like as somebody that's super successful, and I was thinking about this earlier, going back to like what we have and being grateful and just overall happiness and stuff. Do you, has your life gotten, have you noticed like over the last few years, like happiness levels, have they increased as you've acquired more stuff, like been more successful? Or do you find that like the more stuff I've gotten, you get that like instant dopamine rush of like, I got this cool new thing and the happiness, but then it's kind of back to like, you level out. And just, I'm curious because I was thinking about this the other day. Like I just built a new house and all these things that I have, I'm like, I'm obviously happier because of things I have, my wife and my kid on the way and stuff, but like tangible things like finance, money. I've been asking a lot of friends that, like what they think.
That's a really great question because, like, when I got all this like fancy stuff, the watches, the cars, and all that, yeah, for sure. That like the moment that you got it, it's like, oh my God, like, you hit your dreams, it's great. But I don't think it's the thing that I always thought that I'll be like super happy once I got all these things, but I realized that it wasn't that was powering me behind. So I actually went like, I was doing more stuff. I was like trying to find myself, like, I was doing more spiritual stuff, like, doing more meditation, kind of like to seek my inner self, like inner peace and all that. And it has been working well. Like, I wasn't so driven, like even though we have a vision board, I was just telling Evan the other day, like I was like, are we materialistic? Everything on the board is like just cars, watches, like big houses and all that. And I was like, yeah, we should start putting things like I want to be like the best brother. I want to be like the best husband. I want to be at my peak state, what drives me, what's my values. And we talk a lot about all these things, like rather like compared to like a couple of years ago, it's all about like, supercars. And things changed a little bit. Like when I start leveling up, I start questioning myself, like, do I really need all these things? And like it's great having these things, but like once you get it, it's just like a normal car. Like you don't like appreciate it like someone that doesn't have it, right? So, and when you drive it from inside, I was just admiring like my car the other day. Like I was just looking from outside. It looks good. It looks great. But when you're driving inside, it just looks like a normal car. You're just driving a car. The concept is still the same. So I learned to like take time to like, touch the car, like look it from the outside and to kind of like, because you kind of lose touch when you own things for too long.
Yep.
You just kind of take things for granted. So the other day I was like, oh my God, I didn't know my car looks so good, right? I appreciate that I was able to afford it and to own it, right? And I appreciate everything in my life, my relationships, my friends, like my buddies and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I started to like appreciate life more than what it's supposed to. Like, I started changing like my lifestyle to put myself more in a better state. And I'm looking more into like personal like biohacking, like kind of like make myself feel good without like, I mean, I take some supplements for sure, but I don't do it like crazily, but I just like want to make myself feel like amazing every single day and be in control of my emotions, of the things I do, doing things I like, getting into partnerships with people I enjoy doing business with and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been awesome taking the kind of like the mindset shift a little bit. I mean, I still enjoy like driving my cars and probably like I still have like some goals that I want to hit, like personal like goals. But it's probably not the main driving force to kind of like just because I want to buy those things,
Yeah.
right? Probably in the past, yes, but now, nah. Yeah.
Because it's a challenge, right? Like I was talking to a friend of mine, Rich Sheffer, who I've become really close with the last year and has become a mentor of mine. And we were chatting about this, I think last week. And this is kind of what spurred this whole like post I did today in the conversation about like the double-edged sword of goals, right? It's like you need to have them because if you don't have them, there's no reason to pursue something, right? That gives you that thing to work towards and you need that motivation, right? That's our fundamental as a human being. Like we're either running towards something, away from something, our most core being. And so it's like you having that, whether it's a house or a car or tangible thing is important. But I think what people miss, people that are just getting started, I'm sure you have tons of people in your groups, right? That are like into the game, they're new a year in, a few months in, and they have this belief that it's the goal that will fulfill them, not the pursuit of the goal. And that was something I think you kind of got to is like, hey, having those things is important, right? Like we want to have nice things and stuff, but it's by setting that, hey, I want to get an Aventador, or I want to get, some Koenigsegg or something crazy, some crazy thing, Richard Mille, like that's when I get it, I realize that no matter how cool it is, eventually it might be a few weeks, a few months, it's not going to be that anymore. Like it's like when you get the iPhone, right? Like every year when you get a new iPhone, you're holding it like the first day or two you have it, you place it down gently, right? You don't want it to touch anything. You're cleaning it. And then it like the first weekend you drop it once and you're just like, I'm just going to throw it around. And same thing with your car. Like on my car, it's like the first, few months I had it pristine, like kept it. I didn't like even a little drop of wood or like cleaned it up and stuff, was detailing it. And then you get a few months in and you're like, just I'll leave a coffee in there. Like it's time and perspective, right? It makes it has less of that impact. So yeah, it's just interesting to me. It's like that pursuit, it's the chase that is so important. I think makes successful entrepreneurs, right? Because it can't be the thing. Because if it was the thing, there wouldn't be Elon Musk's, there wouldn't be Bill Gates, there wouldn't be Warren Buffett's. Like if the thing satisfied, those guys wouldn't exist because they would have just stopped working a long time ago because they have everything. Like if you're Jeff Bezos, you have $200 billion, like you literally could have anything in the world you could possibly want. You could buy a whole country, but he keeps working and building this massive empire. So yeah, it's I've just been contemplating a lot. I think I've been getting more introspective as this COVID and pandemic, and as I've had less time to go out and do things. I've just been spending more time thinking about it. It could be I'm becoming a dad soon. Like, what do I want? Like, what's important? What's really important to me? Yeah. And I'm glad we're able to chat about it and stuff. So, like, I know I took you down a total rabbit hole right out of the gate before we could even dive into stuff. Let's change gears here completely, unless you want to talk any more about that. And in which case, feel free to stop me at any moment.
Yep.
But like, what are you thinking about right now, ecom wise? Like, what is getting you excited? I mean, you and Evan have such a pulse on the industry across from the stores to the software, the process, like the whole thing. And so I was really excited to chat with you because like you're one of the guys that probably has the like deepest insight into what's trending right now, where you see opportunities. So I'd love to just get your kind of pick your brain on that a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So like, I mean, we're kind of like investing more resources into building our like development team. Like like we have switched gears a little bit into more softwares.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, like in the card, like we are probably rolling out probably two, three more softwares out this year to support the Shopify or e-commerce community. Definitely, like we'll be going broader rather than just supporting Shopify. We're going support WooCommerce, Magento, and all the other probably big commerce platforms as well. And for e-com dropshipping, it's still great. It's kind of like our cash flow. It's like a lot of people see drop shipping like, oh, it's not a long-term game, but for us it's also not a long-term game, probably, but we're gonna do it as long as it's making us money. It'll be quite silly to turn down something that's generating like really, really good money every single month. That's cash flow based, right? So, but we're also building at the same time. We're like preparing some brands that we wanted to launch. I don't expect them to grow to like snow teeth whitening, that kind of scale. But I would prefer to build smaller brands, like probably like brands that's doing like 500K to $1 million per month. I'll probably build like 10 of them, right? So I have more options of like scaling whichever that has the potential of going to a bigger scale, or probably exiting them in a couple of years. So like when we do our business, like when we got started, drop shipping gave us the cash flow to start doing more things. But like I just had an interesting conversation with like one of the executives in like Shopify Singapore. He was asking me, Steve, why don't you just focus on only one project and really make that thing go like huge, like probably like a really like couple of multi nine figures company. I was like, yeah, I love that, right? But chances are you're not easily gonna like hit a jackpot so easily, right? So which is why I like to diversify my risk. So at this point of time, right, if I lose like a couple of like my brands, my dropshipping business, I'm still pretty comfortable. Like I'm so diversified right now that like all the businesses my partners are bringing, they're running the business. We employ about 450 people right now across the globe. So it's very diversified in such a sense that every business has their own CEO running the business. So I don't see why I'm not going to be able to hit one jackpot out of this big group of companies. Because I've did a couple of startups in the US before, like my Creos, my Indiegogo campaigns and all that. Yeah, but when an entrepreneur starts anything, he always has the best intentions.
Yep.
He wants to grow this to like the unicorn or like lead the American's dream or whatsoever. But chances are reality versus what's happening, it's always not going to be turning out to the way that you want, right? So I just learned how to take the back seat a little bit. Of course, I'm still aggressive when in terms of planning like the businesses, but like I'm just gonna like it's kind of like building multiple campaigns from the ads perspective, right? You don't, sometimes when you launch ads on Facebook, you don't know which ones are gonna like which campaigns or which ad sets are gonna perform well, right? And when the ones that's performing well, we're gonna like put in more resources from our company or hire more people, plugging it into it and scaling that company, which is great. So I kind of like that model a bit more. And there's some like companies that we created with like really, really low expectations, and it went on to do really well. So like, okay, this model is working for us. It's kind of like a hybrid shotgun plus sniper approach, where we start from a shotgun approach to kind of like, go wide. Then when we pinpoint something that's doing well, then we put in more resources, then we'll go the sniper approach. And I think that model's working well for us. And definitely, I mean, like in this space for so long, we kind of like all understand that like drop shipping, you're not, like a lot of people are talking about it, but I'm not sure that like, anyone successfully like really sell their like drop shipping stores for like good money. I'm not sure. But like for our stores, like it's really hard to kind of like sell, I feel like in drop shipping, because like usually we scale so hard, then when you want to sell it, it's like it's the product that is pretty much dead, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of like we don't want our efforts to go to waste, which is why we kind of feel like, oh, maybe we should start building out some smaller brand stores, niche stores that probably in the future that we don't scale so hard, we could sell it off to like 2-3x multiples probably. But I think the big exit that we're looking for is probably more on the software side because like usually you could exit that for like at least 5 to 10x multiples, and it's so much easier, and because the profit margins are definitely so much higher compared to like e-coms, right? So e-com fuels are all our other businesses, and we are starting to build up our kind of like ecosystem to support one another. Like we have like fulfillment, we have agencies, we have softwares. Yeah, and it's been great so far, and I think that's kind of like how I feel the trend would be moving towards, like exiting the business like for a good sum of money. I think like probably business owners need to plan this ahead, probably at least 3 to 5 years ahead, and not like like drop shipping. In the end, you can't exit, and that would be like kind of like a waste because you're putting in so much resources building up the teams and everything, and you can exit in the future, which is why I think all of us should like start planning for long term rather than looking at short term. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's weird. It's hard for people to do that, right? I think it's one of the interesting things that I found is most of the trends that have happened in the last few years in our industry, whether it's the boom in info products to drop shipping and everything in between, have been focused on cash flow. It's focused on short term, right? So
Yep.
it's typically people that don't have any real income or are working a
Yep.
9 to 5 job for 40, 50 grand a year, and they just want to hit, they want $100,000 in income.
Yep.
And so all of their decisions are built around short-term cash. And you get into this trap where you build businesses that you can't get out of. And it's a very slippery slope, right? Like we went through that earlier in our career with our first agency. Like you build an agency and agencies are very, very hard to get out of. Like in terms, you can get out of it, you can leave, which is what we did, but like to get any money really out of it, people don't people don't like to come in and acquire businesses that are heavily dependent on talent, that are going to have low retention in terms of clients or income. It's like drop shipping, like you talked about. Most drop shipping stores, it's hot product, fuel it with ads, but you take away the ads, the sales also disappear. Right. So somebody's not going to come in and buy a business that they also need to keep funding, $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 a month in media buys, especially if not media buying experts. So, I mean, it's good advice, right? To think about the big picture. And what you said, which is, it was early on what you were saying, is great advice for anyone listening, which is you don't have to pick and choose, right? It's not mutually exclusive. What Steve and Evan are doing, what they've been doing is, hey, we have this business over here. We know we're not going to be able to sell it, but it's a great cash flow center for our business. And we can take this cash flow, this income, and we can reinvest it into SaaS, into businesses that we can then sell for 5, 10x EBITDA. And I think more people need to do that, like reinvesting of profits. Once you get to a certain point, right? At a certain point, you don't need any more money. Like once you get to a certain point where it's, hey, you have your house, you have your cars, you can pay, you can get food, you can eat, like all the basics, right? It's like you're saving money. It's, hey, let's start reinvesting cash. Let's start investing into SaaS. Let's invest in building our own brand. Let's do something where now we're playing a bigger game, because that's where you build wealth, right? It's really hard to build wealth on cash flow, because you cannot acquire the assets needed, right? It's like when you're somebody like Warren Buffett and Bezos, like if you have $1 billion of cash just sitting in the bank, like on even just savings, like just the income from that is massive, right? You put into real estate stocks, like it's that principal is so high that the income generated from the returns is massive. So I'm curious, like, is the play eventually to just, hey, drop shipping as these stores kind of die and as it dissipates, like we're just going to keep kind of closing them, or are you going to keep ecom going at some point and just maybe make it more brand focused?
It really depends because like I would say majority of the cash flow is still coming from drop shipping. So we're gonna just milk this. I don't think it's going away. It's just probably just gonna get harder when like But now the shift is like we're shipping faster. Like we're some of the inventory we're shipping from the US. So like we work on great products. So we don't really get a lot of penalties from Facebook, like feedback score, slow shipping, crappy product. We kind of optimize our model a little bit so it's not drop shipping. I mean, we don't really drop ship a lot unless it's new products, right? But usually when we're really confident about this product, we bulk, we
Yeah.
ocean it over to US, or probably we work with like, direct shipping lines that go directly to Europe, UK. So shipping's pretty fast within 10 days. I mean, definitely it's been affected a little bit during COVID times, everything's slow, but this model is still working great for us. And we're just gonna do it until like things get so hard, or probably it's so hard that it's not worth our time anymore. But a lot of people are just doing it for like, they're earning money, good money, and they're not reinvesting into their business. They're just like spending or probably living the lifestyle, but buying crap that they don't need. And they might come to a point whereby they realize, oh shit, the good times are over. I should have been doing that. Even like ourselves, like we have been reflecting, could we have bought like, more properties, instead of like buying like, fun things that we don't need and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a point where all entrepreneurs, they need to reflect. We start doing more reflections every single like month, like, reflecting what did we do, what could we have done better, what's our upcoming goals, just reflecting on the goals, kind of like make things so much better for us.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and it's you can't go back and change things, right? All you can do
Yeah.
is see what you did, and luckily, with especially what you guys do, you teach and you help, through your groups and your stuff, like so many other entrepreneurs, and hopefully help them avoid making any things that you guys think you made mistake wise, and maybe they'll buy one less thing and buy another piece of real estate, and then they'll avoid any regrets that you never
Yeah.
have.
I don't think a lot of people are talking about it because like all like even like in all the programs, like everyone's just talking about like Facebook ads. They don't really share with you how to build a team. You should start setting up systems, SOPs, like having like project managers running the business. So it's kind of like everyone's just so focused on only one part of the business, right? But running a business is a wide. There's so many things that you need to do, like HR, finance, and all. No one's talking about all that kind of stuff, and which a lot of people run into the problem whereby like they start scaling. Numbers are great, but they might realize that, oh no, like I need to pay so much tax, I need to pay my staff so much money, my HR is in a mess, I don't have someone running the business. So I'm constantly trying to level up like in all different aspects of things. Definitely I have talents that I bring on to spearhead those stuff, but I think one thing that entrepreneurs needs to constantly do is like leveling up things that they are not comfortable with. At least not going like super deep, but at least understanding the concept, the frameworks, that how like great companies like TikTok or whatever they're running on, what kind of frameworks, what kind of like project management are they running, how effective, how do you measure KPIs and like all that kind of stuff. I think it's kind of like a little bit underrated because it's not as sexy as
Yeah.
Facebook ads. It's not as sexy as like how to scale this stuff to the moon and all that kind of stuff. But I definitely think it's like it's pretty lacking in this market, and I honestly feel that people should be going towards like leveling up internally, like making good cash flow, investing in talents, bringing more people into the game so that they could help you scale more. So which is why kind of like for our different companies, we kind of like, we invest in like sometimes we invest in the company, sometimes we acquire the company. So like when we acquire the company, we put in some of our talents and we start scaling up, probably double, triple the sales revenue in probably like less than 6 months. And it's been great so far, this model. I kind of like wish I could kind of like do this on a bigger scale in the future. And I think there's one acquired for Amazon business. I think it's called Trust, THRAIS dot IO or something. So I think they raised about 100 million,
Yep.
and they're just acquiring all
Acquiring
the
Amazon businesses.
yeah.
Yep.
So it's pretty much an M&A company,
Yep.
and I kind of like feel that that model is pretty interesting, right? And yeah, I'm definitely looking more into like M&As and definitely see how we could like bring more companies under our portfolios and scale that up. And eventually probably like I think it will be much easier because we actually wanted to list our company in Hong Kong, the main board, but there's so much compliance that you need to do, that it kind of like it's not worth the time for us to do it. So eventually we kind of thought, oh, maybe like, using the software, it'll be so much easier because there's so much less compliance and complications. Because like if you do drop shipping, you need to take into account like, the tax jurisdictions and everything, import tax, sales tax, and all that kind of stuff. But for software, it's pretty straightforward. So I
Just
think
do an
that's something
SPAC. Just
yeah.
that's the hot thing now in the U.S. Just do a reverse merger, and nobody cares. That's what everyone, like all the electric vehicle companies, because there's a lot less red tape and logistics, which is that whole model is fascinating to me. Like that, there's like it's just a giant loophole that nobody's decided to close. It's just like we're just going to create a shell company and then reverse merge, and the company's now public that didn't have to go through the normal process. But yeah, I mean it's so true. Like the whole running the business thing, and I feel like maybe 0.01% responsibility, probably even less, just in the grand scheme of things. But like people in our industry that have taught Facebook ads, Google ads, all the stuff that we see all the time for the last 6-8 years, because in order to sell it, you need to be aggressive and need to say, here's the results, here's what you can do with Facebook ads, here's what you can do with ecom, with Google ads, with these different things. And the people that see it typically get this idea that, hey, if I just learn Facebook ads, I can make a lot of money and I can grow a business. And they neglect all the other pieces. And I still see it, and I'm sure you see it all the time. I'll get questions and posts where it's, hey, I launch all these Facebook ads and I'm doing all these strategies and things, but they're all losing money. And I go and I ask them some super basic questions, just like even like, well, who's your actual customer? What's their actual problem? Let me see your actual product. What makes your product different than all the other products out there? What's your brand? What's your frame? Like all of these questions, just what are your margins? Where are you getting your product from? And they don't have an answer to any of them. It's, well, no, it's just, I don't know what makes my product special, but it's a cool product and I think people need it. And I thought if I just learned Facebook ads that I could make it work. And I don't know how you fix that, because it's a like systemic problem in our industry, because it's just been years and years and years of all the people teaching this. So you have like a whole generation basically of marketers that this is what they've learned. And again, like I don't want to be controversial, but like it's because I really do have a ton of respect for Russell and ClickFunnels and that whole company, like a massive amount of respect and everything. And I know there's marketing and it's part of it, but like I do think that mentality of like one funnel away and one store away, it does mislead to a negative word, but it does make people think that like if I build a funnel, like I can be very successful. And maybe you can, it depends on your goal. Like if your goal is like, hey, I just want to make $50,000 a year, or I want to make $100,000 or whatever. Like, yeah, you could possibly, do that with one, you could easily do that with one funnel. But like, if you're trying to build something that you don't have to worry about where your next check's coming from after a few months or a year, you need to think bigger. You need to think about actually building a business. And what you guys are doing makes a lot of sense. And we're actually, fun or not, like we're doing the exact same thing pretty much, which is, hey, we realized, we talked to a lot of our mentors, people in the space, and said, hey, like you guys have a unique skill set, just like you and Evan do, which is you run a lot of traffic and you do on performance and stuff. So you understand all these different products and industries and what's working, what's not working, because you bought the media for it. You know what the costs are. And now you also have all these people that have businesses and stores, or you can manufacture yourself and launch your own brands or acquire brands. And then you can put your growth team in, you have your operations team, you have all these pieces plus growth, which is what most private equity firms miss, right? Like that's an advantage I'm sure you guys are experiencing. There's a lot of people with money. There's tons of people out there that have money and can buy companies, can invest in companies, and they could bring the big stuff. They could bring legal, they could bring operations, they could, bring the more fundamental side of the business, which is important. But a lot don't bring like growth and innovation in those pieces, which is super, super important, for businesses right now. So it's cool to hear that you guys are moving down that path. Is that something from like an exit standpoint? Do you see, eventually doing some type of roll? I know you talked about potentially going public and stuff. Would it be, your software companies? Do you intend to do like, hey, we're going to roll a bunch of brands? I don't know if they're in different industries, your different stores and stuff and different brands, but what's the actual kind of play there in terms of how you would structure it?
Um, we put all our companies under a holding company. So like, the reason why we do that is so that like every business we could just plug it away and sell it if someone comes along with sufficient enough cash
Yep.
and just want to like throw at our faces and like take this money and just go away. But I think it's for software wise, we also put it in different companies. So in the event if we need it, we could just merge all like 4 or 5 different softwares into one public company. And but if we're focusing on one new project, but if that goes well, probably we could like scale it up pretty big, because like for Intercart, like I mean we haven't been able to like run ads, and just by organic traffic we're processing probably like 60-70 million per month through the software, and it's been bringing a lot of value to like people. So we're seeing on like how we could expand on this a little bit more to kind of like help more performance like e-commerce entrepreneurs kind of like scale this and just take probably a percentage, like 0.5% or 1% or whichever, kind of like what Shopify is doing right now, but in a sense how we could really build this up into a more performance based kind of like card or software that kind of like helps people runs their e-commerce easier. We're still thinking on how we could expand on like just only from checkout to something a little bit more helpful, because not a lot of people knows what's post purchase upsells, one click upsells and all kind of stuff, optimizing your checkout, add to cart and kind of stuff. So we're just seeing how we could like bring more value in terms of softwares. And definitely, if one software could go IPO by itself, that'd be great, right? And it's actually not hard to for softwares because the profit margins are really big compared to drop shipping, or probably compare even to brands, right? Brands are
Yeah.
great, but like the amount of like investment you need for inventories, like it's going to be quite a significant bit, especially when you're scaling. So one of my friends is selling like TVs, and like during COVID, I think he did almost like 8 figures in a single month. And like like I was like, wow, business is great. And like when we are having the conversation, he was like saying, yeah, business is great. The money that's stuck in the business is also amazingly high, right? So a lot of people don't see it from that standpoint. People say, oh wow, $10 million in sales, but he said like it takes time to manufacture, ocean ship it to like the warehouse. It's gonna like, so the lag time is exactly how much inventory you need to be prepared for in the event. So he said if there's no like no problems with manufacturing and all that, he probably could scale it double the scale if things are going well, but that would require significant more like cash flow as well for the business. Yeah.
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, we do that. We just launched for like one of our political brands. We launched a Trump bobblehead that's like just absolutely taking off, and it's the same thing. It's like you get I think we just placed another 50,000 unit order, and so it's you're playing this game of forecasting, right? It's hey, we
Yeah.
know the election's coming up. We know that there's a 4 week lead time to get all of them made and manufactured, and you're playing a game. It's because we don't want to order. You don't want to order too much because then you get burned, right? You're sitting on just a ton
Yep.
of cash essentially. But you don't want to under order because then you're screwed, right? If people want the product, you don't have it. So yeah, it's definitely software is a something that we need to get more into because it's just a super high margin business with great exit
Yep.
potential. So
Yep.
definitely something we're exploring. What do you think in terms of like it could be some software you're working on, but just in general, like what I find interesting is just how fast AI is evolving and just all the amazing applications that are being either used right now or in kind of the development pipeline. Like, how do you see that impacting what a lot of people in our industry do on a day-to-day basis? Because I have some opinions of how I think it's going to impact the media buying and stuff in terms of jobs it's going to replace. But curious to get your thoughts on it.
I'm more a traditional guy, so like I know there's a lot of softwares, kind of like being able. We use softwares too, but in a sense, we still rely heavily more on manpower, because like sometimes the software might cost more than the manpower. Like I mean, especially in Asia, right? I mean, it might be worthwhile to use them in US because manpower is so much significantly more expensive. But if we're using the main reason why I think that we're using AI and all that kind of stuff, there's only two things to me. It's either like better quality or like more better performance, or like lowering your costs so much that it doesn't make sense to hire like 100 media buyers like to run like across different companies, right? But if the equation is a little bit opposite, like it's not the AI stuff is spending more money and the quality is not as good as like the actual media buyers, then I'll probably still stick to the traditional convention way until like it's really been proven that like machine learning, AI learning, it's kind of like leading the way, or like probably they can do everything for us. Then yeah, I'm definitely down to exploring that more. But at this point of time, I still have the more traditional and kind of conventional way of like building the team, letting like them take charge of like the campaigns, because like machine don't have emotions, and sometimes you need some emotions in it, kind of like to be part of like running a good campaign, like being, of course you could set rules and all this kind of like things in place, but kind of like still like the best traders in the world, like it's still humans. But of course it's debatable, like all these big banks and all that, they have all this like scripts and algorithms running that from behind the scenes. But I'm not sure if that's going to be the case for like replacing media buying. But in terms of software, I think it will be really good for analyzing and coming up with predictions rather than like solutions, and giving like it could kind of like Fitbit, right? They give you all these metrics, they do some like machine calculation, and like, hey, or probably like the Aura ring that like we're wearing every single day, like kind of like predicting your sleep, like here's what you should do, and giving like recommendations rather than solutions. I think that's probably what I foresee it might be moving more towards, rather than like clear cut solutions right from the bat.
Yeah, it is tricky because you're right. I mean, it's being able to think like a human is hard to teach, right? You can't like it's hard to program that into something. Um, I think there's a lot of like tedious parts of media buying that probably will be replaced sooner than later. But yeah, a lot of the critical thinking, just the angle, stuff like that is definitely going to be harder to replace. And even if they can, like a lot of the behavioral economic books that I've been reading lately, because I've just been on a kick of that, it's like the whole economic world went through this, where it's for centuries, the best economists in the world made assumptions based on a world that should act rationally, right? Like a world of econs, as Thaler says. So it's, hey, this is how people should react. Like this is logically what people should do. But the reality is that people don't act logically, right? It's like they make decisions that might not even be in the best interest. They make decisions that don't make sense. And so it'll be really interesting to see how how AI like is able to balance that, right? Because you're getting a lot of inputs and data and assumptions, but at the end of the day, like if it's using that to then make a decision, but the person it's using it for isn't thinking the way that they should be thinking, I don't know how you work that in. And that crap blows my mind. Like I'm not smart enough to even be on that level of like understanding how all the stuff Elon Musk does with Neuralink or AI is working. I'm sure they'll eventually figure stuff out, but it'll definitely be a little while.
I think I saw one of the AI thing that I think Alibaba recently like kind of like launched internally. I'm not sure if it's public yet. I think they kind of like demoed like a software that they have built that's going to be rolled out to all the sellers in the Taobao or China e-commerce platform. I think they could just put in like some like a photo and just like tag it in the right category ID or something, and it will produce like 1,000 banners for advertising, including the copywriting, the photos, and everything.
That's
Like
crazy.
in a few minutes, they'll provide you all these options, and you could like swap. I think it's a bit crazy when I saw it. I'm not sure if it's actually really working, but if they roll that out, it's going to destroy all the banner designers jobs for sure. And even in Singapore, like some restaurants, you don't see much people. It's all like it's all like machine bots, like just sending the things right to your table. It's all programmed from the kitchen itself. So it's one of the biggest food restaurants in the world. It's called Hai Di Lao. It's like hot pot and all that kind of stuff. So and that guy migrated to Singapore, and he's kind of like the richest man in Singapore right now from China. So he started like doing all this kind of stuff, and I heard in one of his speech that he's gonna like be removing like what 60-70% of like human labor of servers like serving the food and all that kind of stuff across his entire chain. And that's going to be like a big example, like that machines or like robots or AI or whichever is gonna like taking over like human jobs.
What do people do? Like, what do you think? I was talking to Scott Wolford about this like a few months ago, just about the future, right? There's like an optimistic view of the future, and there's like a pessimistic view of the future. And like, yeah, this guy replaces 70% of jobs. Like, where do you think all those people go? Like, what do they start doing?
You mean like those people that lose their jobs, or?
Yeah, those like the 70% that he cut with his robots and stuff. Like, where do those people like find work, or what do they do now?
Definitely they'll be like spread out across all the F&B industries like immediately, right? They will start finding jobs, and like like when there's no more jobs, they'll be forced to start looking like changing, because a lot of people are so living in their own comfort zone. They're not willing to step out. Even like sometimes when when we look at students, like, we have people coming in like 60, 70 years old trying to learn new things. But there's still people 20, 30 years old that they don't even want to try out digital
Yeah.
marketing or like e-commerce. And I think it's how the world works in such a way to force people outside their comfort zones. But I think it's better to embrace the discomfort while you're still okay, rather being retrenched and start being forced to like seek changes in your career. But I'm not sure. It's hard for all these people to immediately be able to find new jobs, because even with COVID, there's so much people being retrenched. Like in the Philippines, like we kind of like we didn't have to retrench anyone. We only fire people due to performance issues, and we have been hearing that like their husbands, like they're being 99% of the staff has been fired, let go, and all that kind of like bad news. And a lot of them have no jobs, and they're surviving on like government pensions or like government give outs and all that kind of stuff, and it's pretty sad to see. So, but I think this would only get worse in the future when more AI or probably more technology rolls out. It's going to be tough on people on the lower level trying to like make things work day to day.
Yeah, it's tough. It's like, I don't know how you balance those two things, right? Where it's you can't you can't stop innovation, right? There's obviously a group of people that want to stop AI and stop robotics and stop these things because of that fear that you lose, mass amounts of people lose their job and can't get reskilled. But at the same time, it's like, imagine if they did that at any other time in history, like when Henry Ford came out, the assembly, like they just said this is too revolutionary, or they moved from the horse and buggy to the car, like this is going to replace a lot of buggy drivers and stuff, but so we can't do this. It'll I, I think the challenging thing right now is like the speed at which things are happening, right? Like I think
Mm-hmm.
even 40 years ago, it took a while for new products, new services, and new product categories to come to the market. And like that's continuing to shrink, where it's like every few years, it's like a whole new product category, a whole new industry that's supplementing or replacing an older industry. But but yeah, I mean, it's you can't see it. That's the challenging part, I think, for a lot of people, is they can't see like what's happening with the internet. Right? So if you looked back and told people pre-dot-com bubble, like pre-2000s, that the internet, like one day in 20 years from now, most people are going to be like employed, not most people, but a lot of people are going to be employed by all these online companies, and they're a lot of them are not going to create anything. They're just social networks. People would be like that's crazy. There's no way that millions and millions and millions of people are going to work for these types of companies. So yeah, I mean, I'd imagine something like that's going to happen, where just there's whole new industries that you can't even see right now that are going to need whole new classes of jobs. But that could also be me just being slightly optimistic on the future there.
But I think it's because there's so many like technologies that's not easily available to like the normal people in the past, right? For example, setting up servers, setting up stores are like so easy right now. A few clicks, have a Shopify store up and running. But in the past, like even in my days, like in 2005, 2006, setting up like a Magento site is like crazy. It's hard. You need a
Yeah.
developer. You need to set up like your dedicated servers. You need to buy IP addresses. You need to set up all the security. It's hard, man. It's not like for someone that could like get started so easily. And right nowadays, like you have cloud hosting, you have like Amazon, all these servers that you can deploy as and when you need according to your traffic, and all these things are just pushing things so much faster. There's so much available technologies, like there's even like networks to kind of like help you build up like CRMs whereby you don't need to start from scratch. So I think it's good. I think it pushes like innovation forward, whereby all the people, all the old school things that are not like renewing or probably like innovating, they're gonna be outdated pretty soon. And one thing that I really don't like is banks. Like banks are really like outdated. A lot of things, there's no transparency in a lot of things, and like they charge crazy rates, and I really don't like businesses that has like monopolized the situation, like for like merchant gateways, Stripe, PayPal. They kind of like monopolize things, right? And you're kind of forced to do it, and for them they're so big that they don't need your business. They can just ask you to buy, see you tomorrow, or don't see you again, right? And those are things that will start slowing down innovation. And I think one of the things is, for example, like we in our retail stores, we need to use like payment machines, and I don't know what goes behind the scenes, but it's so outdated. Like even the machines looks good and everything, but like clearing up, you have to end the day, you have to end the transaction. If not, the bank is gonna hold you like 30 days or 3 months. I think we have one transaction that we forgot to kind of close the day for that machine, and they decided to hold 6 months of our money for that day, which
That's
is like
insane.
which is like $100,000 for 6 months. I was like, why? And the reason why we weren't able to close the day was because the machine has a problem, and it wasn't able to connect to like the Wi-Fi, and so it cannot send a signal to tell the banks that, and they say, oh, sorry, we have to flag this as high risk because like you didn't close the day for that transaction. I was like, oh my God, this is so outdated. Someone needs to come in and like disrupt this guy so that they go out of business. But yeah, that's kind of like what I thought.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting thing. Like even what's happening at Apple right now, where you have these companies and organizations and like industries that control everything we do, like that basically control the means for us to do business or distribute things. Like it's it's insane. Like the fact that Facebook, like this hit me one the other day when basically Apple rejected Facebook's update because Facebook wanted to be able to waive the fees Apple charges for small business owners to have like do like live events in the app. It was like a new feature, and basically they said like, hey, well, if you sign up for Facebook and don't do it through the mobile app, the small business gets more money. And Facebook basically, I mean, Apple basically said, hey, that's circumventing our rules, so we're just not going to accept it. And like that's when it hit me with Facebook, because you've heard about like Spotify and Epic Games now having this huge fight with Apple, but like Apple controls every. Like if Apple just decided that we don't really like Facebook anymore, and we're just gonna basically block it from the App Store. Like Facebook's a massive, one of the biggest companies in the world, but like that could destroy the entire business. Like same thing, Spot, like all these massive companies, Uber, like that we just they're billion, $100 billion companies, and like Apple essentially controls their fate. Like Amazon controls the fate of so many businesses. Banks control the fate of every business. Like they could decide to hold your money. That could put
But
some people out of
at
business.
yeah, but at the in the US, it's still fair game. They don't do all this. Do you know that in WeChat, you cannot, when you send anything that's from Taobao, it gets blocked.
That's crazy.
You're not, you like when you, it's like WhatsApp. I send you like an Amazon link inside WhatsApp. You can't click on the link and visit Amazon directly through WhatsApp. It's blocked in China. The competition is so big between Alibaba and Tencent that it's openly like it's an open war. Like, I'm gonna block your stuff. I'm not gonna be able to show you this and all that. So it's a little bit crazy. But if something happens like what you mentioned, wow, it's gonna be Wild Wild West.
Yeah. What do you think? Speaking of like China, and that's like, what do you think about this whole TikTok thing? Like the U.S.
Um,
TikTok ban.
I'm not sure because like I kind of like TikTok. I think it's kind of like one of the new waves that we're like looking into it. Like I don't see a lot of good performance from there, but definitely for eyeballs, it's definitely one of the best tools. That's I think it's openly available to a lot of people right now. But I don't think it will go to the extent of blocking because there's quite a big amount of people, and I don't think there's any using like national security and all the kind of like stuff to kind of ban it is kind of like a little bit BS, and I don't think it's going to pass. I'm not sure because like Donald Trump has so much power, right? But it'll be a little bit unfair to a lot of like technology companies that's trying to like scale internationally because US is definitely one of the best markets, biggest markets, and full stop there means like they have to focus their efforts on like Europe or other countries. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I agree. I think it's like you give people the choice. That people have freedom. They want to download an app, and if there's a small risk that the Chinese government's looking at their TikToks, like that's why I felt about privacy just in general. Like in the U.S. too, everyone talks about like Big Brother spying on you and they're listening to you
Yeah.
and stuff. I always thought like I don't have anything to hide, so I don't really care. Like it's it's this weird world we live in now where people have gotten so accustomed to things for free, like everything's just free, and so they want the free stuff, but they also want all their privacy. And like
Yeah.
those two things cannot exist, right? It's like either you start paying for Facebook and you start paying to do Google searches and you start paying to watch YouTube videos or you do all that stuff and tweet, or you use a service and understand that people like us are actually subsidizing your use of the platform. It's a weird thing that there's so many people now that like have that belief where it's like I want my cake and I want to be able to eat it too.
I think that's what humans are already trained so much to be. But kind of like in US, they're kind of always using like, all this like China government and all that kind of stuff to kind of like push out competitors out of the market. And definitely Facebook has the most to win out of this because like he's trying to kind of use his because they're growing so fast that they are becoming a threat to Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And if they're not controlled, who knows? Probably like 5 years from now, they might even be bigger than TikTok after than Facebook, right? Nobody knows what's going to happen, which is why I think Zuckerberg or probably like the U.S. government is so desperate to kind of like to keep things under control, so that like the top tech companies in the world will still be the US rather than those in China or probably Southeast Asia or anywhere else or in Europe. So I think it's a common tactic that I've seen across like the years. Like I mean like even Huawei or some of those like I think semiconductor companies and all that. So but it's the world that we live in, right? So we just have to observe and just go with the flow. We can just observe and just kind of like see what's happening and see how we could like go with the flow so we don't get affected by all these big brothers playing their games.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like a weird time because you have just the handful of companies that just control so much of everything. Like I was reading a stat the other day that basically, if the FANG stocks like didn't have the boom, right? Like Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, like if they didn't have the big run-ups they've been having, like the market would actually be, I think it would be negative for the year. So it's like a few companies are just absolutely crushing it right now and just on fire and growing and growing and growing. And I don't know if you end up like in a time where Amazon and like Apple like just own everything, right? It's just like they own every store. They just own all the industries, because they're just at a certain point you get so incredibly big and have just so much capital and your tentacles and everything. It'll be interesting to see like when somebody tries to step in to do something about it. I know the government seems like they've been trying to, like having all these hearings, but like it's going to be difficult for those companies, I think, to keep acquiring power and not get broken up or have some serious pushback from at least like the U.S. government.
I think it's hard, man. Like, especially when, like, I mean, look at those interviews with Mark Zuckerberg, or like people that's asking those questions. Like, it seems like they don't even know the business,
Yeah.
or like they don't even know what questions to ask. So, like, it's so easy for like, like these big companies to defend themselves, especially with like, they can afford probably the best of the best legal lawyers to kind of like defend the company. So I think it's pretty hard unless like, someone just said, all right, we're just gonna come in. Like in China, I think they kind of forced it because like in China it's communist, right? So I think the way they do things is like you're corrupted, the government can just step in and just take control of the company or acquire the company. But I think in the US, I think it's hard because like US is so like democratic and it's so open, and I think it's hard. But if the government starts stepping in, people might be afraid of like, people might lose trust in the whole system. So it's a very tricky, very, very tricky kind of like play that the government needs to be aware of. But
Yeah.
those questions when they ask, oh my God, it's like,
It was embarrassing. Yeah.
yeah, I know, right?
It's really hard to see. You're right. Like it's hard to get somebody to break up these tech companies, but they don't understand the companies. Like they're not the right people to break them up because they won't do an effective job of it. They'll just ruin it and mess it up. But I mean, we'll see. I think it's just they all have gotten so big and so powerful. But at the same time, too, it's like I'm torn even personally, because a big part of me is like pure free market, pure capitalist. At the end of the day, like if Jeff Bezos just outcompeted everybody, right, and just like he didn't get there by accident, right? Amazon didn't just like stumble to be Amazon. Intervening, breaking them up, kind of puts a ceiling essentially on entrepreneurship. It's like, hey, you can take all the risks, start your dream, grow your company to X size, and if it gets X size, then it's no longer acceptable. We're going to come in and make you split your company up. And like America's been that way for a long time. People don't realize like we're not pure free market. It's like we're an in between, because even like the bailouts, right? It's like in a pure free market, like the banks should have failed in 08, 09. Like the airlines should have failed this year. Like there's all these companies that basically you're pure capitalist free market while it's good times. And then when things get really bad, now you're like, oh, I need government help, right? Like we need the government involved and all this stuff because we want a giant loan and some support from you. And it'll be interesting if that just continues. I think people are kind of fed up with it. But at the same time, it's if you shut down, these big, they gotten so big, like, and you let them fail, there's a ripple effect that impacts everybody. And like, I don't know what the answer is to those like massive companies and how they move forward.
Yeah, for sure. So I was just thinking like, we're just gonna like continue doing our thing, and I don't think we're gonna like I don't have that kind of ambition that I want to build like $1 billion company. Like probably like I'll be happy with exiting like a company that for at least 9 figures, multiple 9 figures would be great. Yeah, good enough for me. Just gonna live my life, enjoy life, friends, family, and just gonna do my thing.
That's the way to go, man. I think that's a great way to wrap it, because this was an awesome episode and got so much value. And I just enjoyed catching up with you and chatting and stuff. I know you have an amazing group and stuff. If there's anything that you wanna plug, any place people can go to learn more about you and Evan, get involved, learn from you, what's the best place for them to go?
I think the best way would be just to join our free group on Facebook. It's e-commerce elites mastermind. I think we just broke 100,000 people.
You did. Congrats.
Yeah, yeah, thanks, man. So kind of like I think that's the best way to kind of like learn because there's a lot of free content inside
Yeah.
videos. We constantly post free stuff in there. So yeah, I think that's the best channel to find us, or probably just follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, it was so great to catch up. It's been way too long. We need to do this again, and
Yeah, for sure.
and definitely not let 2 years go again. So, I want to thank you for joining me, man. Thank you for the time, the time difference there and making it work. And we'll see everyone on the next episode next week. Thanks, guys.